Dear brothers and sisters, this time I would like to make a video about the abortion industry. As always, before I inform myself on the subject, I believe that women should have the choice whether to have a baby or not. I was brainwashed by the system to believe that our planet was overpopulated and that we shouldn't get any children. It is a fact that our white Western countries have a very low birth rate and that we are not having enough children to replace our current population, so we are below replacement levels. At the same time, women are getting babies later and later in their lives. This all affects our demographics in a negative way. You just have to watch the documentary The Demographic Winter to see this reality. The link to the documentary is in the description.
Is the world overpopulated? We learn at school that our planet is overpopulated and that we shouldn't get any children. They told us that having children is a burden for future generations. Fact is that if you take the world population of 7.6 billion people and divide that by the surface area of Texas, you get around 90 square meters or 1,000 square feet per person. This means that the world population fits inside one US state. As you can see on this world population density map, the population density varies from country to country. Some areas of the world are thinly populated and some areas are densely populated. South America, as an example, has around 24 persons per square kilometer, whereas Europe has 72. The USA has around 36 people per square kilometer, where Africa has 43 people per square kilometer. China has a population density of 148 people per square kilometer. Africa is a huge continent with over 30 million square kilometers. Europe, USA, and China have around 9 to 10 million square kilometers. India has around 3.2 million square kilometers. This means that Europe, the United States, China, and India all fit inside of Africa. This is how big Africa really is. So, the world is not overpopulated. The populations of the world are concentrated mostly in the cities. Some places in the world have a high population density, and others have a very low population density. As an example, South America has a very low average population density. But here also the populations are concentrated in the cities, like Buenos Aires and Cordoba. The United States overall is not overpopulated. It has a high population density in the cities and a very low population density in the rural areas. In Europe, as an example, Western Europe has a high population density, whereas Eastern Europe has a low population density.
In the United States alone, every year over 1 million fetuses or babies are killed and aborted. These fetuses, or the baby's remains, are sold then for big money to the pharmaceutical companies. Most of these abortions are performed within the first few months of pregnancy, but many also at a later stage in their fetal development. Since the 1980s, over 1.5 billion babies have been aborted worldwide. This is the largest hidden genocide in history, next to the cancer industry. We are now going to look at some facts on the abortion industry.
From abortionno.org, abortion facts. Many people fail to appreciate the sheer magnitude of bloodshed, suffering, and death that legalized abortion has introduced into human experience, both in the United States and worldwide. Far more human lives have been violently ended by this scourge than by any other war or genocide in all of history. Unaware of just how early and rapidly prenatal human development occurs, many Americans believe that the law should not protect the lives of embryonic and fetal human beings in the first 3 months of pregnancy. However, a strong majority of Americans believe that abortion from the 4th month of pregnancy and on is an evil of such immensity that it is appropriate to ban it. But even the numbers of the 2nd and 3rd trimester abortions are alarmingly large. The following facts on abortion are provided by the Pro-Abortion Guttmacher Institute. In the United States, approximately 800,000 abortions per year performed in the 1st trimester of pregnancy. In the United States, approximately 100,000 abortions per year are performed in the 2nd and 3rd trimester of pregnancy. Worldwide, number of abortions per year, approximately 56 million. Number of abortions per day, approximately 153,000. Where abortions occur, 27% of all pregnancies in developed countries end up in abortion, 1/3, and 24% of pregnancies in developing countries end in abortion. In the United States, number of abortions per year, over 900,000 from 2014 census. Number of abortions per day, approximately 2,500. Who's having abortions? At what age? More than 50% of women obtaining abortions in the US are in their 20s. Women aged between 20 and 24 obtain 34% of all abortions. Teenagers obtain 17%. and girls under 15 account for 0.2%. Who's having abortions per race? While white women obtain 39% of all abortions, their abortion rate is well below that of minority women. Black women are more than 3 times as likely as white women to have an abortion, and Hispanic women are roughly 2 times as likely. Who's having abortions? The marital status. 46% of all abortions are performed on never married women. Married women account for 14% of all abortions. Who's having abortions? To which religion? Women identifying themselves as Protestants obtain 43% of all abortions in the US. Catholic women account for 27%, Jewish women account for 1.3%, and women with no religious affiliation obtain 24% of all abortions. 18% of all abortions are performed on women who identify themselves as born again or evangelical. Who's having abortions? At what income? Some 75% of abortion patients in 2014 were poor or low income. 26% of patients had incomes of 100 to 199% of the federal poverty level, and 49% had incomes of less than 100% of the federal poverty level. That's around $15,000 for a family of 2. Why women have abortions? 1% of all abortions occur because of rape or incest. 6% of abortions occur because of potential health problems with either the mother or the child, and 93% of all abortions occur for social reasons, that is, the child is unwanted or inconvenient.
So 1% of abortions are performed because of rape or incest, 6% of abortions are performed because of maternal health problems, and this means that over 90% of all abortions are performed because of socioeconomic reasons. Most women nowadays cannot afford a baby and have to focus on their careers or study. Getting babies in our age is very expensive and time-consuming. And we wonder why nobody's having children. What if I told you that the situation was designed to be this way? That the powers that be that control us do not want us to have any babies or children. They socially engineered us to behave in a certain fashion. We're now going to watch a video about the so-called sexual revolution, which was not a sexual revolution. It was not the liberation of our sexuality, but actually it was an attack of our natural sexuality.
Wikipedia on the sexual revolution. The sexual revolution, also known as the time of sexual liberation, was a social movement that challenged traditional codes of behavior related to sexuality and interpersonal relationships throughout the United States and subsequently the wider world from the 1960s to the 1980s. Sexual liberation included increased acceptance of sex outside of traditional heterosexual monogamous relationships, primarily marriage, the normalization of contraception and the pill, public nudity, pornography, premarital sex, homosexuality, and alternative forms of sexuality, and the legalization of abortion all followed.
So the powers that be actually celebrate this age as a sexual revolution, which it was not. It was an attack on our natural sexuality. Before that time, women were most likely to decline any sexual advances a man made unless he proposed to her in marriage. After this so-called sexual revolution, they offered us something in return. They told us that premarital sex was healthy and good. Of course, you would assume that the number of sexual encounters in our societies would have risen because of the sexual revolution, but that is not the case. The number of sexual encounters actually fell. The sexual frustration grew in the society, and this created a new market for sexual gratification. Did you know that there was a so-called golden age of porn? Porn has become so mainstream that everybody has access to it from anywhere. But there was a beginning to this industry. And when was this beginning?
Wikipedia on the golden age of porn. The golden age of porn, or porno chick, refers to a 15-year period around 1969 to 1984 in commercial American pornography, which spread internationally, in which sexually explicit films experienced positive attention from mainstream cinemas, movie critics, and the general public. It began with the release of the 1969 film Blue Movie, directed by Andy Warhol, and the 1970 film Mona, produced by Bill Osco. These films are the first adult erotic films depicting explicit sex to receive wide theatrical release in the United States.
So the legalization of abortion, the introduction of the anti-conception pill, the so-called liberation of our sexuality, all coincided with the golden age of porn, where porn became an acceptable movie industry. If this sexual liberation or revolution was so great, why are most of us still single and watching porn for our own personal gratification? Because the powers that be wanted it this way. If we watch porn, we don't procreate. In my young years, I was really happy to have some sexual relief from porn. But the porn industry brainwashes the people to believe that unhealthy sex is normal and that everybody should do it. If you have incredible good-looking men and women performing unnatural sex or unnatural acts, then people will believe it's cool and try to mimic it. In short, they're actually trying to destroy and pervert their natural sex drive and try to profit from this new market opportunity. The powers that be have done this before. As an example, Germany in the 1920s and 1930s, after World War I, and during the Weimar Republic, Germany was filled with prostitution and pornography. Berlin was known as the bordello of Europe. Because of the induced economic depression and hyperinflation of the money, millions of Germans were out of a job and starving. The Versailles Treaty literally destroyed the economy of the German Reich, and hundreds of thousands of women and children turned to prostitution. Pornography and vile sick movies were the result. The powers that be always romanticize and falsify our view on history. Our secret rulers do this over and over again. History proves it. Everybody knows that the Roman Empire, before it collapsed, that it was the most perverted, vile and decadent society back then. Homosexuality, pedophilia and bestiality was rampant. Why, you may ask? Well, the Roman Empire was taken over by the same people that rule us in secret today. After they took control over the Roman Empire, it became the sickest and vilest society on earth. It was always the same procedure that they implemented. They destroy the self-esteem of men and women in such a way that they become sexually exploitable. If you want to trade in women and children, then you have to do it in such a way that the men do not rebel. How do you do this, you may ask? Simple. Control of information. If you control the information the men and women get every day, then you can make sure that they never find out about the rapes, the murders, the kidnappings of women and children all across the world. This is why the number of single mothers has risen dramatically over the last 30 years. As I've said before, this is all by design. The powers that be organize and finance the feminist movement solely to create further division, tension and hostilities in between the genders. In essence, turning the men against the women and the women against the men in a classic divide and conquer strategy. As an example, in today's society you cannot give a compliment to a woman or ask her phone number without fear of being sued for sexual harassment. Henry Cavill, a successful and famous movie actor who played the role of Superman in Man of Steel, says that he does not go on dates because of this. At the same time, our secret rulers rape and murder our women and children, and nothing's being done about this. If any cop speaks on this subject, he ends up in a ditch. The feminist movement was never about empowering women, but actually about isolating the women from the men. At the same time, the hatred of men or misandry is promoted throughout the media. Particularly the white men are the most hated in our mass media and movie industry. Just mentioning this fact is difficult for some people to comprehend, but if you look at all the incredible shooters that you play with incredible high graphics, it is already very multicultural because it is an industry, but most avatars in these games are, well, white people. They actually created Resident Evil PC games with all white zombies and everybody was shooting them. And then they made a version in Africa and it was deemed racist because there were more black zombies in Africa than white zombies. And the hero was a European guy shooting black zombies. So I find it really awkward that you just point this out, that it's okay to kill white people digitally over and over again. We see this in our shooters. Counter-Strike as an example, yeah? We kill men over and over again in our games. And when a woman gets killed, then it's an outcry. And even if it's a feminist NPC from Red Dead Redemption 2, then the media calls outcry when you actually apparently kill or harm a virtual NPC character in a video game. Yeah? White men are most vilified in the media and in our productions. As an example, if you take the movie Dumb and Dumber, and instead of 2 white losers, you put 2 black guys in there, you would call it racist. Or you put 2 Asians in it and call it Dumb and Dumber, then it's racist. Our men are mentally and biochemically castrated. Mentally, because we're conditioned to believe that we're losers eternally, doesn't matter what we do, and that we cannot call our women without being called white supremacist and racist. In essence, our manliness was robbed from us, and it's so sad. White men do a lot of good, but it's not appreciated. Without the white men in our white Western world, we wouldn't have this type of civilization. All the houses, all the roads, all the cars, everything that you see outside is built by men. In that essence, you should be thankful for men. So the men, particularly the white men, are also targeted for practically erasure. If you destroy the minds of men, that's already the biggest step. Next step is the biochemical standpoint. We have so many female hormones in our food supply, like estrogen, and the men are becoming more and more feminized. The sperm count in the last 40 years, actually all around the world, dropped by 50%. This means that actually the fertility rate of men generally dropped by 50%. That's a big loss for the population. In the 70s, they normalized homosexuality, lesbianism, promiscuity, premarital sex, probably also bestiality. Now they're trying to promote pedophilia or normalize pedophilia, and at the same time they promote transsexuality. I am against transsexuality because if you would ask yourself the question, would you change your dog's gender, the dog that you love so much, would you cut off its dick to make it like a vagina, an artificial vagina? And if you ask yourself that question and you are actually mentally sane or mentally healthy, you would answer that question with no. And if you know the truth about the pharma industry, on how many times they actually mess up in operations and how many people they mass murder every year for their chemo or radiation therapy, I would never trust the hospitals or the doctors. Only if in an accident and they can patch me up again, then yes. But I would never go to an hospital again. That's how dangerous the pharma industry is. The fact is, the more homosexuals, the more lesbians, the more transsexuals are actually created through this promotion, and at the same time through our perversion of our minds. People see this as an acceptable lifestyle. You're no longer able to correct them and say that is unhealthy, I wouldn't do it. Then you're actually attacking the people, because the more people act this way, the less people are able to breed. So the more beautiful women get broken by relationships with men and see that being lesbian is normal, then she is a loss for our people because she will no longer procreate. The same with men. If I listen to the songs of Ricky Martin, I can understand why he actually became gay. The goal of all these agendas is to reduce our birth rate, to make it really difficult for us to find peace and harmony with the opposite sex. Because in this peace and harmony and in love, you generate more love. A caring family is a very powerful love unit. We were all socially engineered by our secret rulers to feel shameful about our own sexuality. At the same time, they fed us lies about our own sexuality. The pressure that young men have when it comes to sex is immense. I remember in high school when everybody made jokes about their first time on how long they could last. One said 20, 30 minutes, and the other one made jokes about that. And if you couldn't last long, you were a loser. From men it is expected that they are experts in bed from day one. And if you cannot satisfy a woman, then you're a pussy or a loser. I always thought that you had to be the greatest fucker of all times. But to become the greatest fucker of all times, you needed experience. This all has to do with the so-called sexual revolution. What the elites did to us is that they destroyed the relationships in between our men and our women, raising false expectations on both sides. And then they give us the solution in porn and payable sex. What you have to know is that sex is an ability that can become better and better over time, the more you practice it. And that everybody, both men and women, have to learn this. And that there's nothing wrong with being a virgin or waiting for the right person to have sex with. Before I woke up, I believed that premarital sex was normal and part of our culture. Now I don't believe that anymore. Just follow my train of thoughts. What if you have sex without contraception or without a condom? Then you tend to become pregnant. Now the brainwashing at school told us that having sex using condoms or anti-conception pills was normal and healthy. I tried a condom once and I found it disgusting. And anti-conception pills are really unsafe. And at the same time, I don't want my potential girlfriend to be chemically castrated. So fact is, if I want healthy and natural sex with a woman without contraception, then I should be ready to have babies with her. And when is this? When this woman is the love of my life and I want to marry her. Now I understand the Bible where it says, wait until you're married before having sex. And no, I don't believe that you have to test every man before you know that he's the right one. Because sex is an ability that becomes better and better over time the more you practice it. And I believe that if that person is the love of your life, that he or she would gladly learn this with you. And anybody else who makes fun of you because you're apparently not good enough in bed or otherwise is not worthy of you. So take your time in getting to know the person. If that person really cares about you, he would actually wait for you. I believe in love, after all. We're now going to read an article about the abortion rate in the United States.
From johnsonarchive.net. United States abortion rates from 1960 to 2013. Compiled by Robert Johnston, last modified 28th of November 2014. This is a graph showing us the abortion rate since the 1960s from the United States. As you can see, in 1970, where abortion was legalized, it skyrocketed. Here we have a table with the abortion ratio, the abortion percentage and abortion rate, and the number of abortions. In 1960, it was around 290 or 300 per year. And then you can see that in 1970, it rose to around 200,000. So after abortion was legalized in the United States in 1973, as you can see here, it exploded. In 1970s, you had around 200,000 abortions. In 1971, you had over 480,000 abortions. In 1972, 586,000. And already in 1973, over 700,000. And if you keep looking, it has been steady at over 1 million abortions every year since 1973. This means that since 1973, in the United States alone, over 61 million babies or fetuses were killed or aborted. This is the number of abortions.com. It is a website giving us the numbers on abortions in the United States and worldwide. And as you can see here, the date is 8th of February 2019, 3:51 p.m. The total number of fetuses or babies aborted in the United States alone this year is 97,000. This day alone, over 1,600. And since 1973, where it was legalized, 61 million. In total, the number of abortions worldwide since 1980 is 1.5 billion. And worldwide this year, over 4 million.
The abortion industry is the greatest silent genocide of all times, next to the cancer industry. Big Pharma is literally the biggest killer of children and patients worldwide. Big Pharma is responsible for more deaths than Mao and Stalin put together. Stalin killed around 70 million Russians, where Mao killed over 100 million Chinese people. And Big Pharma is just worse. It's just nobody knows about it. Simply put, Big Pharma is evil. Now, many people believe that we live in an age of sexual liberation and that we all have lots of it and are sexually satisfied. The sad truth is that most women and most men are sexually frustrated and depressed. If you look at the porn industry and see how it is booming, it is a multi-billion-dollar business that exploded in the last 30 years, then you know that there are millions of men and millions of women buying their products. In marketing terms, it is simply generating a need for a product that you want to sell. After the destruction of the natural sex drive in the 1970s, you have more and more men and more women living in single households. This is the principle of Hegel. First you create a problem, the sexual revolution, and then you offer a possible solution, porn and payable sex. We're now going to look at a diagram of single households in the United States.
This is a graph from the US Census Bureau that shows us that the number of single households in the United States has steadily increased since the 1960s, and more importantly, since the so-called sexual revolution in the 1970s. You have to understand that married couples on average have more and better sex than single people that just have one-night stands once in a while. In short, they destroyed our relationships via social engineering and offered us a solution, porn and prostitution. This is a perfect example of Hegel's principle of creating a problem that was not there before and then offering a solution to the problem that they created in the first place.
So the number of single households steadily increased since the 1970s. Whereas in the 1970s, around 8% of the people in the United States lived in single households, today it is at 28% or 1/3 of the population. The more single households, the bigger the market for porn is. At the same time, the median age of marriage for both sexes increased since the 1970s by 7 years.
From thespruce.com. Estimated median age of first marriage by gender. There has been a change in the median age at first marriage for both men and women in the United States, and the amount of change appears to be getting larger. In 2018, the median age at first marriage was almost 30 for men and almost 28 for women. While historically women married at an age that was 3 years younger than men, that gap has been slowly but steadily decreasing. Now they are only separated by 2 years on average. Here are the statistics from the US Census Bureau of the median age at first marriage and a graph of the data going back to 1890. So the median age for marriage in 2018 for men is 29.8 and for women 27.8. If you go back in time, you can see that the median age for marriage in both men and women is steadily decreasing. In 1973, where abortion was legalized, the median age of marriage for men was 23.2 and for women 21. This is a graph of the median age of marriage in the United States according to the US Census Bureau. In the 1950s, the median age of men who married were 22.8 years old, whereas the women were 20.3 years old. Since then, we have a steady increase in the median age of marriage for both genders. In 2018, the median age of marriage for men was 29.8 and for women 27.8. So the median age of marriage for both genders rose by 7 years.
This means that statistically, the women that marry younger have more sex than women that marry in a later stage in their lives. So they tell us from day one that we need to get that high school diploma, and afterwards we have to go to the university and study 5 or 10 years depending on the study, that we actually have to mentally torture ourselves to get that perfect diploma so we can land that perfect job, and then we in theory could found a family. Sadly, most academics are the most brainwashed and decide against having children. Any process that damages or reduces the fertility rate of a people should be forbidden by law. The fertility rate of a people is a health indicator for the folk body. This means that if the fertility rate of a people is damaged or reduced, this could mean the destruction or the annihilation or genocide of the people. One of my favorite songs is Pink Floyd, We Don't Need No Education.
We don't need no education.
And another song that I like a lot from Bob Marley, the Redemption Song. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery, none but ourselves can free our minds.
Emancipate yourself from mental slavery, none but ourselves can free our mind.
How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it, we got to fulfill the books. Bob Marley. The powers that be destroyed our natural relationships to our women, and at the same time they destroyed the family unit. I myself come from a patchwork family and grew up without a father. The number of out-of-wedlock children in the United States increased dramatically since the 1970s.
This is a graphic from the CDC that shows us that women are having fewer children today. As you can see, the median birth rate of women in 1957 was 3.8, whereas the median birth rate of women in 2010 was 1.9. That is below replacement levels. Out-of-wedlock childbearing has risen over the past several decades. As you can see, the percentage of children growing up outside of wedlock in the 1970s was around 8 to 10%. In 2010, this number has risen to over 40%. This means that nearly half of all children today in the United States are growing up outside of wedlock.
So over 40% of the children growing up today are growing up without a father or growing up without a mother. Children growing up without a father are more likely to become welfare recipients and are more likely not to land a well-paid job. Children both need a father figure and a mother figure to develop a healthy mind. As an example, if a young son sees how his mother is treated badly by men over and over again, because she simply doesn't find the right man, then the boy will believe that all men are bad. If a son sees his mother in the loving arms of his father, then his first impression of manhood is that of a father taking care of his wife and children. In today's anti-male society, they tell us that men are no longer necessary and are useless. This is simply not the truth. Without men, we wouldn't have modern housing, internet, cell phones, TV. Without men, we wouldn't have cars. Yes, without men, you wouldn't have Facebook, you wouldn't have YouTube, you wouldn't have Twitter. All Asians and modern civilizations are built by the hard labor of working men. Actually, more precisely, without white men, we still would be living in caves and hunting for our food. Anyhow, back to the subject of abortion. So abortion in general should not be an option. Of course you can make an exception for women that were raped or where the mother's life is in danger. But this only makes about 1% or 6% of the total abortions. What we should actually do is implement policies where young women are allowed to have children without socioeconomic repression. Both men and women should be self-sufficient when they literally grow up. Both men and women should not be forced to study for years and work on their career for years before being able to found a family. The system does not teach, it indoctrinates and destroys the creative thought process. After doing all the research on abortion, I believe that abortion is the killing of a preborn child. If NASA declares a bacteria on Mars as life, why don't we see the life in the wombs of our women as life? We're now going to look at a fetus that is 3 months old. This is what pro-abortionists say is not life and can be murdered.
Dit is a 3-month-old baby or a 3-month-old fetus.
I used to laugh about the Bible in 2007, but the more truth I found out online, the more believing I become in Christ. I've had many synchronicities reading the Bible. So let's see what the Bible says about babies and pregnancies in general. So in the Bible it is said that God knows your soul before you are born. And that is the truth, we all have a soul. If you would induce out-of-body experiences, you would know that you have a soul. So your soul, with the help of God, builds up your body inside the womb of your mother. Now imagine in this peaceful state that some doctor starts cutting off your limbs. And that after pulling you out of your mother's womb, he kills you off and sells your parts to the highest bidder. This happens all the time. You have to understand that God knows your potential before you're actually born. And that when you're aborted, this potential cannot come to fruition. Just imagine if Bob Marley or Michael Jackson would have been aborted. How would you react? We're now going to look at a graphic of the standard procedure to abort babies.
In this graphic you can see a third trimester abortion. It is called a dilation and evacuation procedure. Before they do this, they euthanize or kill the baby or fetus with an injection. When the baby's heart stops beating, they remove the dead baby piece by piece. The remains of the baby or fetus are sold.
The first time I researched about this procedure, I was relieved actually to find out that most doctors apparently kill the baby first with a lethal injection, and then they take the pieces out bit by bit. After doing some more research, I found a video where a woman who worked at one of these clinics testified that they actually don't use lethal injections to kill the babies off first, because they need the baby parts intact and without poison. So if possible, the doctor tries to get the baby alive and then kills it off outside of the womb. If you would write a script about this, it would be a Hollywood horror movie. You know the movie War of the Worlds, where the aliens kill and harvest humans? This is already happening since the 1970s. Another great Christian activist is the activist mommy. She has become a very powerful voice in the online movement.
About the activist mommy. Elizabeth is an activist vlogger who educates and inspires the public on the burning social and moral issues of the day that are important to families and patriots. She and her husband Patrick, who is a medical doctor, author, and movie producer, have been pro-life ministry leaders for many years and home educate their 10 beautiful children. The growing threat to America's children and the vicious attacks on religious liberty is what dynamited Elizabeth out of her comfort zone to inspire a nation of belittled conservatives and Christians to come out of their closets and boldly take their country back. Elizabeth daily triggers the left by confronting the lies of abortion, feminism, Islam, and the homosexual agenda with wit and snark like only she can, and she regularly posts viral commentary videos which have netted over 70 million views. The pulse behind all her activism and cultural commentary is her love for her family and her savior Jesus Christ. And if you search for abortion on the Activist Mommy website, you get the following hits. Vermont to follow in New York's footsteps, bill introduced to legalize 40-week abortions. Only the Lord can deliver us from this genocide. There are very interesting articles relating actually to the abortion industry. Of course they say it would only be implemented if the mother's life were in danger. A cesarean section could save the mother and the baby or fetus. Up to this day, all babies that were born prematurely were kept in incubators, and many of these babies survived. So why do we need laws to legalize abortion up to the 9th month? Unless you have an alien from the movie Aliens in your body, you should always try to save the baby, even if this means that it is born prematurely. Euthanizing virtually a grown baby before ripping it out of the womb of the mother should not be an option and is murder.
So we proved that the entire plan behind the sexual revolution was to isolate the men and women in our societies, to reduce the overall birth rate. We proved that they used this sexual revolution to market the sex drive in form of pornography and payable sex. The sex industry has exploded since the 1970s. At the same time, the illegal trade in women and children has risen worldwide. That is a horror story, and I hope that this nightmare ends soon. Now we're going to look at the financial aspect of the abortion industry.
The abortion industry in numbers. In the United States, an abortion costs around $620 on average. If you multiply this with 1 million abortions on average per year, then you get over 620 million US dollars revenue per year for only performing the abortion. An intact fetus sells for around 42,000 US dollars. You multiply this times a million and you get over $42 billion per year. Together with the operation, the pharma industry has a total revenue greater than 43 billion US dollars per year. Imagine the total revenue the pharma industry generates every year. From naturalnews.com. Sickening, major food corporations use tissue from aborted babies to manufacture flavor additives in processed foods. The company that uses this type of research is Kraft, PepsiCo, Nestle, and so on. Wikipedia on the HEC293 cells. Human embryonic kidney cells, also often referred to as HEC293, or less precisely as HEC cells, are a specific cell line originally derived from human embryonic kidney cells grown in tissue culture. HEC293 cells have been widely used in cell biology research for many years because of their reliable growth and propensity for transfection. They are also used by the biotechnology industry to produce therapeutic proteins and viruses for gene therapy. From the WashingtonTimes.com. Aborted fetus cells used in beauty creams. So in this article they actually admit that high-quality skincare products use skin cell proteins from aborted fetuses. This apparently has a rejuvenating effect on the skin. From pbs.org. Scientists say fetal tissue remains essential for vaccines and developing treatments. So they also use fetal cells to develop vaccines.
Wasn't the purpose of this study to help develop a human cell line, or to support the use of human cell lines in the creation of vaccines?
The idea was to study the cell strains from fetuses to determine whether or not they could be used to make vaccines.
This study involved 74 fetuses.
76.
76.
Mm-hmm.
And these fetuses were all 3 months or older when aborted, correct?
Yes.
What organs did you harvest from these fetuses?
Well, I didn't personally harvest any, but a whole range of tissues were harvested by co-workers.
Okay. And these pieces were then cut up into little pieces, right?
Yes.
And they were cultured?
Yes.
Okay. Some of the pieces of the fetuses were pituitary gland that were chopped up into pieces to okay, included the lung of the fetuses?
Yes.
Okay, included the skin?
Yes.
Kidney?
Yes.
Spleen?
Yes.
Heart?
Yes.
And tongue?
I don't recall, but probably yes.
Are you aware that one of the objections to vaccination by the plaintiff in this case is the inclusion of aborted fetal tissue in the development of vaccines, and the fact that it's actually part of the ingredients of vaccines?
Yeah, I'm aware of those objections. The Catholic Church has actually issued a document on that which says that individuals who need the vaccines should receive the vaccines regardless of the fact, and that I think it implies that I am the individual who will go to hell because of the use of aborted tissues, which I am glad to do.
Okay. Do you know if the mother is Catholic?
I have no idea.
Okay.
But she should consult her priest.
Do you believe that someone can have a valid religious objection to refusing a vaccine?
No.
You have to know that we're ruled by satanic pedophiles who literally eat babies. They see us as we would see our own cattle and pigs. We are mere slaughter animals in their eyes, and they would kill us without a second thought. If you want to know the truth about the satanic elites, then look for #Pizzagate, #Pedogate, #Adenochronome, #ChildTrade to find out this horrible truth. Adenochrom is a substance that is harvested from tortured babies. That is the #1 drug for the satanic elites. Also search for the Cannibal Restaurant online, and you will see that they admit on their own websites that they actually eat human flesh. Many people who don't believe this will be a hoax, but it isn't. That is actually really horrible stuff, but you people need to know. A good series on Netflix, where many truths are depicted, is the series Colony. You have to know that the galaxy is full of intelligent life. There are good stellar civilizations, like the Federation of Light members, and negative dark civilizations like the Draco Empire. And the powers that be that control us on Earth have treaties with the negative ET civilizations. Pretty much like in the series Colony, where the IGA, or the International Global Authority, is in contact with the aliens from day one. The negative aliens in the series Colony need slaves and human resources, and the IGA, or our elites, actually collaborate with these aliens to make that happen. You have to know that millions of children and women disappear every year worldwide. And talking to this subject to my half sister, and recollecting an interview of Rona Bernard, who said that the top elites are only around 10,000 people. So these 10,000 people cannot eat that many children or babies that disappear every year. And since the shadow government of the United States has contracts with negative extraterrestrials, you can assume that these women, children, and even men are shipped off world, pretty much like in the series Colony. There's a good movie from the 90s that depicts this possible truth or truth. It's called They Live. Now back to the topic of abortion. The best way to avoid abortion in the first place is not to get pregnant. Don't get pregnant until you're married. You can love a woman in multiple ways, not only sexually. If you want my advice, do not sleep around. Choose wisely before having sex with anyone. I know it's difficult, but it's better to masturbate than to have a one-night stand and being pregnant afterward. And you must know that the first time you have sex is always going to be a learning process. I only had about 5 sexual encounters with the opposite sex, and they were all bad. The best relief I got is by watching porn. I know porn is not the solution, but it's better to watch porn occasionally than to explode from sexual frustrations. Or simply put, masturbation is better than sleeping around. But you have to understand that porn gives you an unrealistic view on human sexuality. Real loving sex is about tenderness and caring for one another, and not about fucking your partner to death. If you see some of these porn videos, you actually believe that they're really damaging the women, and in truth is they are. The parts where the women scream is simply cut out or edited out. The problem here is when men and women watch this type of porn, where the women are really treated roughly or hardly, that they assume that this is normal behavior, or worse yet, they only get aroused when they see this type of behavior and then mimic it. This is actually generating perversions in our society. I hardly watch porn anymore because pornography online has become so vile and disgusting. It's better to masturbate while thinking of erotic encounters instead of watching porn. If we all would be sexually satisfied, we wouldn't be looking at porn. At the same time, sex is not everything. Because our sexuality has been suppressed for so long, it can become an obsession to get laid. Sex is very important, but not the carrying factor of a relationship. The most important aspect of a relationship is how you treat each other and help each other in everyday life. In a loving relationship, you will treat your husband or wife as it were your other half. In German, we have another word or saying for the word wife. Meine bessere Hälfte, my better half. Meaning that the wife is just another part or natural part of you. Well, personally, I've been single for over 10 years and only had negative experiences in the real world. I've only had positive experiences with female spirits and projections, which taught me a lot. I, for one, will wait for my personal queen. If God wants me to find a wife, He will do so at the right time. I'd rather be in a relationship with a woman that God intended me to have than to be in a relationship with a woman that is damaging to me, like women who have narcissistic personality disorders or are sociopaths. We live in an age where so many people are damaged, and in that damaged state, they can potentially harm others, even in a relationship. So it's better to be alone than to be in a toxic relationship that does more damage to you. So my advice is, help yourself first. Help yourself heal your mind and body. When you achieve this, then you can start looking for a potential mate. Healing takes time and does not happen overnight. I'm reading a good book on the subject, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, by Dr. Joe Dispenza. I made a short book review on my Instagram page. The link is in the description. You can always try to help others, but if they refuse to see their own problems and refuse to become better versions of themselves, then cut them loose. Your personal health and mind is more important to you than saving others who do not want to be saved. I'd like to end this video with a quote of the Bible where it is said that you should actually expose evil. I hope you find this video informative. Feel free to share and like my video, and many greetings from Bad Time, Germany, and cheers!